channel, and today I will be talking about my top 5 favourite books. Well, technically maybe 6 or 7, but some of them is like part of a sequel, so technically it counts as one book. But anyway, let's get straight onto the video. The first 2 books I will be talking about is, of course, one of my all-time favourite books is The Hate You Give and Concrete Rose. But first we'll talk about The Hate You Give. And basically I rated both of them 5 stars on Goodreads. And this one I brought just on like the splurge. And it's because my little sister had it, so I thought I should get it. And because it has yellow here, and yellow is my favourite colour. But anyway, without spoiling too much, it's basically about a girl called Star Carter, who's a young black woman, and she goes to this party, and her best friends, one of her best childhood friends there, called, I think it's Khalil, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, and there ends up being a fight or a gunshot at this party, so everyone flees the party. And then she gets a drive home with him, and they're waiting at traffic lights to, so they could carry on driving. And then a police car starts following Khalil, and he turns in so the police could say hello and to find out what's wrong. And the policeman is a white male. The policeman turns around and asks him to put his hand on the dashboard, which he does, and he's like asking the officer, why have you stopped me? I've done everything right. I haven't been speeding. My music hasn't been too loud. And then the white policeman starts giving this boy attitude, and of course the kid gives it back, and but constantly follows his orders, and it's asking, what's going on, and the white policeman ends up taking the boy Khalil out of the vehicle and asks him to put his hand on top of the car, which he does. And then Star's freaking out and is like, what's going on, and tries to I can't remember if she tries voice recording what's going on or videoing it, because that's what her parents told her to do if this ever happens. And the police officer sees and tells her to put the phone down, blah blah blah, and then the police officer just ends up shooting Khalil, and obviously Khalil is a young black male, and Star's heartbroken, and it's just her talking about the difficulties which she has to face being black, and it's about her wanting to get justice for Khalil. And then it also talks about how, because she lives on a bit of a rough neighbourhood, stereotypically in the book where she lives is known for drugs and etc. And her and her brother had the choice to either go to the secondary school in that area or the one that's in the next area, which is a bit more higher class. And the mum, her Star's mum, ends up taking her to the higher class one, and Star has a white boyfriend, and it's just talking about the difficulties which she faced being one of the only black girls in this school. So yeah, and obviously I won't say any more because I could talk about it for ages, because it's one of my favourite books, and I really enjoyed the film of it as well. But the only thing I could fault with the film is the film middle/ending is different from the book, because they completely miss out a whole character in the film, which is really frustrating. But I'll quickly read the back. It doesn't say much. It just says, "What's the point of having a voice if you're going to be silent?" And I think this book came out a bit before the whole Black Lives Matter movement. Yeah, Black Lives Matter. And I read this just when the Black Lives Matter movement started getting bigger, and I read it, and I just thought it was like not the right time to read this, because obviously it is a heartbreaking time and a heartbreaking book. But yeah. And yeah, it is Khalil. I was just double checking that I said the right name. But yeah. I really recommend this book no matter what type of genres you are into. This is probably one of the best books I read. Definitely number one on my top books to read. And then going on to the next book is the sequel, Concrete Rose, which I also loved. And it's about the star's dad. His name's Maverick. And it's about him growing up and him basically being raised with just her mum, who, you know, I think she has 2 jobs, or she has 1 job and works a lot of hours just to, you know, keep on top of everything. And then his dad is in prison as well, and of course he's black, and it's just talking about the things he faced, and basically he deals drugs just to get by, and it's talking about him having 2 children with different mums before the age of, I think it's 18. I know, but he had 7 when he's 16 or 17. And it's just talking about, you know, him and his life growing up. And I found this really interesting to have it about the dad's life, because in the book and the film, it's the dad teaching Star about, you know, like racism, and teaching her how to what to do when a police officer approaches you, etc. So I think it's really interesting, and I really did love this. There were some points when I literally wanted to cry for Maverick, because some of it was really heartbreaking. And on the back it says, "A searing exploration of black manhood set 17 years before the events of The Hate You Give, with his King Lord dad in prison and his mum working 2 jobs. 17-year-old Maverick Carter helps the only way he knows how, slinging drugs. Life's not perfect, but he's got everything under control until he finds out he's a father. Suddenly it's not so easy to deal drugs and finish school with a baby dependent on him for everything. So when he's offered the chance to go straight, he takes it. But when King Lord blood runs through your veins, you don't get to just walk away." So yeah, these are the first of my favourite books. And I rated both 5 stars on both of these. And I read Concrete Rose, I think the beginning of this year or the end of last year. So it was quite recent, and I was so excited for it to come out. Moving on to the next 2 books is a sequel, and it's an autobiography, and it's of another YouTuber who I followed for a good few years, and I started following her because she'd do these story times, and they were absolutely crazy, some of them. And it's the two Shannon Rose autobiographies. And this one's called Lesson Between the Lines, and the second one is called Part 2. And I really enjoyed these because obviously her storylines were her stories on YouTube, which she used to do, were always so shocking. And because they were all true, and it's just her. This one's talking about her growing up, and then this one's talking about her as she begins to work and start working, because she used to work in the porn industry, and it's about her getting there and some of the crazy stuff she would have to do. And I just found these interesting because her life really was well, obviously now she's grown up and she's got a bit older, but these two books are very heart-shattering, and at some points I genuinely did want to cry because of how sad I felt for her growing up, and how I just wanted to reach in the book and, give her a hug. And I just think they're really beautiful, and I really hope she writes another one, because she has 2 children through IVF. One's called Snow and one's called Storm. And I hope she does one about her whole IVF journey, because as well as that, that's also been quite heartbreaking at some points. So yeah, I'll read the back of the first one first. Former porn star and now a YouTuber, Shannon Rose takes you through her early childhood, which was filled with severe traumatic events. The story of Shannon's childhood is both disturbing and captivating. Shannon shares her deepest, darkest secrets about her life in this book that she hasn't even shared with her own family or closest friends. Shannon spent so much of her childhood in and out of psychiatric hospitals, dealing with drug addiction. She was also a child prostitute. She dealt with emotional and physical abuse at home, and she struggled with eating disorders. These are just a few of personal stories she shares in this book. This candid story will take you along the ride while you follow a life of girl out of control. This incredible journey will whip you past an attempted murder and being expelled from almost every school, and will take you into the heart of what it is like to be young and alone with a psychopath step-parent and a death wish. Every moment of this true story will lend you an insight of the mind of a lost little girl and how she eventually managed to survive through it all despite the odds. Are you up for the wild ride? If so, take a peek inside. And just as a pre-warning, there was a lot of triggers in this. There's obviously eating disorders, there's abuse, there's drug addiction, and I think there's sexual abuse, but I'm not sure. But yeah, this one's about more of her childhood growing up, if that makes sense. And it's honestly heartbreaking. They're both quite heartbreaking. And then for part 2, it says, porn star turned social media influencer Shannon Rose takes you through her life in the adult entertainment industry. She shares secret stories about working as a high-class escort and talks about her encounters with celebrities, athletes and politicians. She manages to create a captivating story that is both tragic and empowering, not shying away from the truth and its consequences. Shannon leads the reader through a series of shattering first-hand revelations about her suicide attempts, shady celebs, past relationships, her abortions, crime and murders, creating a scene that's hard to look away from. Go behind the scenes of the Howard Stern Show and find out what it's like working for Playboy TV, and among it all, learn how a person can find love even in hopeless places, from a marriage ending in divorce through a series of trials, finally leading towards finding a true purpose in life. this is not a journey for the faint of heart, but from the first page of this true story, you'll feel like you're walking in Shannon's shoes, and you won't be able to put it down until you've learned to run in stiletto heels. So yeah, this is more about her, as an adult. And through some of it, there's some pictures. I'll try and find, there's some pictures in it. And I'm not sure if there's pictures in the first one. I'll have a look. Yeah, look, there's pictures in it, which I think is quite nice and refreshing, because you'd read a sad bit, then you'd see not a cute picture, but some of them were really cute, and it would kind of make you pause and just calm yourself down from crying. So yeah, these are the next books that I truly recommend, but remember, there is lots of trigger warnings in this, and some people might find it quite triggering, so if you can handle those sort of stuff, I definitely recommend these, and it's all true, everything in it. So yeah, those are the next books in my top 5. Next book that I truly recommend is a book that one of the first books that I read, that was when I got back into reading, and it's All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. And this book, honestly, it made me cry. And when the film came out, that made me cry as well. But the book is so much better from the film. And I'll quickly read the back. Theodore Finch wants to take his own life. I'm broken and no one can fix it. Violet Markey is devastated by his sister's death. In that instant we went ploughing through the quadrille, my words died too. They meet on the ledge of a school bell tower, and so their story begins. It's only together they can be themselves. But as Violet's world grows, Finch begins to shrink. How far will Violet go to save the boy she has come to love? The story of a girl who learns to live from a boy who wants to die. And it's basically about a boy called Theodore Finch, but everyone calls him Finch, who has a mental health disorder and is very suicidal. And a girl who's called Violet Markey, who is quite depressed as well, and at some point she was suicidal because of her sister's death. And the book goes into detail about why she's so sad about her sister's death, which I won't say because it will spoil it. And it's also, they end up having to do a school project together, and so they end up growing this friendship and end up, getting some sort of feelings for each other. And then something happens at the end, which I won't say because it will spoil it big time. But you see, their friendship grow, and, as they start, getting feelings for each other. And it shows how they kind of help each other out. But it also explains them growing as individuals, in some ways growing in a good way, in some ways growing in a bad way. And it makes you proper feel for the characters. And the ending, honestly, I was bawling my eyes out. I was so heartbroken. But obviously this book does have some triggers with suicide and suicidal thoughts and stuff. But this book, I used to just read thrillers, and then I read this book, and it really did break my heart. But it's one of the books that I always think about a lot. And I truly recommend this, but obviously if it will trigger you, I don't recommend it. but it's so beautiful, and there's little bits in it that like really does melt my heart, like the bird and the purple flower. You understand why it makes so much sense in the book. But I recommended this 5 stars as well, and I also loved the other book she did, Holding Up the Universe. And I'm hoping to get my hands on one day Breathless, which is one of her newer novels. But yeah, I truly do recommend this book because it is brilliant, and there is some happy parts in it. But yeah, I won't say any more because I don't want to spoil it, because there's lots of things I could say, but it will spoil something else in the story, if that makes sense. So yeah, this is the next book that is in my top books. The next book that I recommend is a book that I've read kind of recently, like the end of last year. And there's a funny story with this book, actually. It's a trilogy, but my favourite one in the trilogy is the first one. But I bought the 3rd book in the trilogy and I read it, and I didn't realise it was part of a trilogy. I read the book like getting quite confused, like, am I missing something? Because they kept on talking about a person in the first book, and I'm like, I don't have a clue who this person is. And yeah, I ended up reading the 3rd book whilst I was on holiday, and I didn't realise it was part of a trilogy until I finished the book. And I only managed to get my hands on the whole trilogy last year. Bearing in mind, I read this book in 2018. So yeah, this book is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. And I love any book by Jojo Moyes. Obviously, I haven't read them all, but I've read the Me Before You series. I've read, I can't remember what it's called. I can't remember. I'd have a quick look. I've read Night Music and The Girl You Left Behind. And it was a tough decision between this book and Night Music, because I really loved how Night Music developed. But this book is a bit different because it talks about male in it I think he's quadriplegic. I'm looking on the back to see if it says. And what happens is Lou is quite a unique, I don't know if unique's the right word, but quite a unique character, and she's from this like little town, and she finds that she never wants to move out this town, and she's not really one for trying things new. She likes being in her own comfortable little bubble. And she ends up, the place she works at, which she's worked at for a while, ends up closing down. So she has to find a new job. But the only job that's going is becoming a full-time carer for this quadriplegic, which she hasn't done any sort of caring role. So she's a bit hesitant to do it at first, but when she finds out that her parents are struggling for money, she finds that she has to apply for this job and ends up getting offered for the job at the interview there and then. And it's just talking about how much Will, the person who's a quadriplegic, ends up, him dealing with having no use of his legs and more, etc. And talking about, him struggling to come to terms with it, because he wasn't always quadriplegic. It happened in a motorcycle accident. And it just talks about them and their relationship developing, and her trying to get Will to stop being depressed and trying to get him to want to go outside, etc. And I'd read what's on the back. Lou Clark knows a lot of things. She knows how many footsteps there are between the bus stop and home. She knows she likes working in the buttered bun tea shop, and she knows she might not love her boyfriend Patrick. What Lou doesn't know is she's about to lose her job, or knowing what's coming is what keeps her sane. Will Traynor knows his motorcycle accident took away his desire to live. He knows everything feels very small and rather joyless now, and he knows exactly how he's going to put a stop to that. What Will doesn't know is that Lou is about to burst into his world in a riot of colour, and neither of them know they're going to change the other for a lifetime. And I've also rated this book 5 stars. And after reading the last book, I wasn't sure that this book was going to be that good, but it honestly blew me away. It was so beautiful seeing their friendship develop. And, like, if you have read it, obviously, the ending did, like, almost make me cry. And then once I had read this, I watched the film, and the film was really good, but I feel like the film, they rushed it a bit too much. And it made my heart feel so warm, like their relationship developing, and just everything about it is so, so beautiful, but it's so heartbreaking as well. So yeah, I really honestly do recommend this book. It really is amazing. So yeah. The final book I recommend is The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. And this book I brought because, as bad as this sounds, I brought it because everyone was ranting and raving about it. And I don't really like buying something because of other people, but I notice with books, you know, I do, because like I want to see whether it is good as it makes out. And I was expecting this to be quite cringy, and I don't really like cringy books, so I had quite, as harsh as it sounds, I had quite low expectations for this book. But this book, it made me cry, but happy tears because of the ending. And what basically happens is there's a girl called Tiffy, who's this goofy, unique, sweet girl who's a bit different and always manages to light up every room she walks into. And it's about this other boy. And Tiffy goes through this breakup from a long-term boyfriend who didn't treat her very nice, and she needs to urgently find a cheap new place, but living and working where she lives is quite difficult because it's quite expensive. But then she sees this thing in a newspaper about having a flat share with this boy, and they would share in the same bed and everything, but never see each other. Which sounds obviously a bit confusing, but how it works is Leon does nights, and then Tiffy... No, what was it? I think he does nights, and Tiffy works in the day. So obviously, as she's working, Leon will come home and sleep, blah, blah, blah. And it's just seeing how their friendship develops even though they've never met each other, which I think seeing it happen, reading it happen, is just so beautiful. And you see how the things Tiffy does ends up lightens Leon's world, as cringe as it sounds, and it's just so beautiful to read it. And it just honestly melted my heart. There were so many points in this book where it did just make me feel all warm, and it was just so beautiful because it was nice, so nice and refreshing, because there were serious points of this book, and there was like, you know, funny, humorous parts of this book, and it was so beautifully written, and I honestly loved it. And I'd read the back. Their friends think they're crazy, but it's a perfect solution. Leon occupies a one-bed flat while Tiffy's at work in the day, and she has the run of the place the rest of the time. But with obsessive ex-boyfriends, wrongly imprisoned brothers, and of course the fact they still haven't met, it seems this flat share is more complicated than expected. And on Goodreads, I rated this a 5 out of 5. I rated all these books 5 out of 5. And I have also read House Swap. I think it's called House Swap by Beth O'Leary, which honestly is brilliant. Not as brilliant as this book, but it's almost there. And I'm hoping that she releases a new book soon, because she is a really good writer, and I love how beautifully she writes, and how she doesn't just follow one storyline in the book. There's lots of little storylines of different characters in the story, and I know that sounds confusing, but it's just honestly not that confusing, and it's just so beautiful to watch, read. And I think this would be a really hilarious, brilliant film, but obviously if this was made into film, I feel like they might forget really crucial parts in the story. So yeah, that's a roundup on my truly favourite books. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and don't forget to leave the notification bells on. Also, if you have any ideas on what videos you want me to see, comment down below and I will maybe try them out. Well, I probably will. But this is a roundup of, you know, the books that truly has left it a special place and is in my top favourites. So yeah, I hope you're having a good day, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. See you in next week's video. Bye!